Hi, Mike Filipov here from PracticeGuitarNow.com, and in this series of videos I'm going to start talking about the most common guitar practice problems, mistakes, and obstacles that most guitar players face in their practicing without even realizing it sometimes, that prevent them from achieving their guitar playing goals and improving their playing as rapidly as they want to. If you spent any time on my website, and if you watched the videos on my YouTube channel, then you probably picked up on the underlying theme in everything that I talk about, which is that it's not about what you practice when you practice your guitar, it's about how you practice your guitar that will determine whether or not you will get the results you're looking for out of your practicing. Now, I don't mean to say that the exercises you practice are unimportant. Of course they're important. My point is that there's way too much focus being placed on what exercises to work on and seeking out the best and the new exercises to practice, and very little focus is placed on how you practice and how to practice in the best and most effective and most intelligent way to get the biggest results possible. And if you never learned a single new exercise to practice ever, and for the rest of your guitar playing life you were simply stuck with all the exercises you already have right now today, and you simply improved your practice methods and learned how to practice more intelligently and more effectively, you will become a much better guitar player much faster. Okay, so in a moment we're going to go through the most common problems and mistakes guitar players have in their picking hand technique. And the way this is going to work is I'm going to tell you what each problem is, I'm going to explain to you how it is negatively impacting your guitar playing if you have it, and in some cases how to determine if you actually have this problem. And I'm also going to tell you what to do to solve the problem. So once you know what the problem is, once you become aware of it, knowing what to do to solve it in most cases is very simple, because all you need to do is simply do the opposite of what the problem is. However, training yourself to actually transform your technique from where it is right now with some of these bad habits possibly ingrained in your technique to where it needs to be without these bad habits, so you can play guitar cleanly, easily, fast, and the way you want to play it, is much more involved, and it takes specialized training, which is what I do with guitar players in my rapid fire guitar practice training course. I take them step by step through the exact process that is needed to change all their bad habits and transform their technique. But for now, I'm just going to give you what the problems are. I'm going to explain how to solve them if you want to go about doing this on your own. The first problem we'll talk about is how you hold the pick in relation to the string when you play. And the mistake many guitarists make is holding the pick totally flat or totally parallel to the string when they play. And this requires you to use the most amount of force possible to play each note. As you know, when you push through the string applies pressure back on your picking hand, and the larger the surface area that you use to push through the string, the greater is the pressure that's being applied back on your picking hand. So to solve this problem and to make your picking feel much easier, all you need to do is angle the pick about 45 degrees towards the head of the guitar. This will make your picking motions much smaller and a whole lot easier. Another problem with holding the pick flat or parallel against the string is that the recoil after each note, meaning the reaction of your hand in response to the string applying pressure back onto your pick, becomes so great that it forces you in many cases to bounce the pick away from the strings, which makes your motions a whole lot bigger than they need to be. Here's a demonstration. I'm going to play a major scale using first the inefficient picking attack by holding the pick parallel against the string, and then I'm going to play the same scale with the pick angled 45 degrees, and you will see the huge difference in how my picking hand looks. Observe. Now maybe on the surface this didn't look too bad until you compare it with the more efficient picking motions that I'm going to demonstrate for you right now with the pick angled 45 degrees. You will see how much smaller the motions become to play the exact same notes. The efficiency that you gain from angling the pick 45 degrees versus hitting the string dead on, flat, or parallel will make it much easier for you to play guitar fast, and will also make everything you play in general feel much easier overall. The next very common problem guitarists have with their picking is not releasing tension from their picking hand in between notes. What I mean by that is the process of playing notes involves you first applying some tension with both hands actually to push against the string and to play a note, and then you must release that tension, that effort, to be able to play the next note. But if you do not release the tension from the first note and carry it over to the second note and carry that tension to the third note, to the fourth note, and so on, then what happens is the faster you play and the more notes you play, the more your hand becomes tight with all that extra tension. And because of this, you start making mistakes, you start becoming tired, and your playing just falls apart. There are many different strategies you can use to solve excessive tension problems. Some are simpler than others, and the simplest one you can use is to take advantage of any rests or pauses in the music that you're playing to remind yourself consciously, send a command from your brain to your hands to relax any excessive tension. For example, if you're playing a guitar solo and there's a long note in it somewhere that you're sustaining with vibrato with the fretting hand, for example, you use that extra time to quickly check your body for tension and send a command from your brain to your hand to relax any excessive tension. The important point to remember is that we develop excessive tension in our guitar technique subconsciously, meaning you develop it without realizing it when you practice, and before you know it, you just feel yourself being so tense that you can't play anymore. But to relax it, you must replace subconscious commands with conscious ones. By conscious, I mean the ones that your brain actually consciously directs your hands to do. This is what perfect guitar practice training is all about. It's about replacing the bad habits that your body does on a subconscious level without thinking about it with conscious ones by directing your hands and reprogramming them to do things correctly, efficiently, and intelligently. So this was one way to solve excessive tension problems. Another one you can apply when you're playing something that does not have any breaks or long notes that you're holding out is to simply rotate your focus mentally as you practice. This means every few passes through the scale, you're going to focus mentally on what your picking hand is doing and how it's feeling, and remind yourself to relax any excessive tension that may have built up from playing the previous notes. And as you do this over and over, as you put your conscious focus on this area of your technique, excessive tension, you're going to train yourself to be more and more relaxed and more efficient in how you play and how you pick the notes. So apply these two approaches in your practicing as necessary to free yourself from excessive tension in your picking hand. The next very common problem guitarists have with their picking hand is playing everything with a very light touch. And this comes from a myth that exists out there that if you play everything very lightly, if you pick the notes with very little effort, it will be very easy to play fast. And that is not true at all for many reasons. And actually, if you look at the greatest guitar players ever, even the ones who play extremely fast, they are not picking the notes lightly at all. If you look at guys like Paul Gilbert or Rusty Cooley or other great virtuoso shredders, they're able to pick the notes extremely hard with a lot of force and are still able to rip and shred at the same time. And there are two parts to being able to acquire the skill of being able to play loudly and aggressively, and also being able to play fast and fluently. The first part is controlling excessive tension, which is something we talked about a few moments ago in the video. And the second part is actually practicing to develop that power and that articulation in your picking hand. And a good way to develop this skill is to spend some time practicing your guitar unplugged. That means turn your amp completely off so your guitar is completely unplugged, and just see how loudly you're able to pick the notes and still have every single note you play be heard. So I was playing this on an unplugged guitar just now, and I bet you could hear every note I was playing. And that is because I spent a lot of time practicing guitar unplugged in the past, and I still do this to this day. I don't do this for hours on end, but I do this as part of my warm-up time to really warm up my picking hand and get it ready for playing. And the beautiful thing is, when you turn the amp on and when you turn distortion on, everything about your picking is going to feel so much easier, so much more effortless. Because in real life guitar playing, when you use distortion, you're not having to pick the notes nearly as hard as you do when the guitar is unplugged. So training with your guitar unplugged for a few minutes a day will have huge benefits for your guitar technique and specifically for your picking. Of course, you won't be able to play everything you play as fast and as cleanly and as effortlessly unplugged as you can with distortion, but if you are at least striving towards that goal, your technique is going to be so much further along than it would be if you simply practiced everything with distortion all the time and never trained your articulation. The next very common bad habit guitarists have in their picking is letting their pick bounce away from the strings in between notes. This almost forms a letter U that your pick makes after playing a note, moving away from the strings, and then swooping back on the strings. This is massively inefficient, and it requires you to use way bigger motions than necessary to play notes. So observe, I'm going to play a scale. First, I'm going to exaggerate the motions for each note by allowing the pick to swoop away from the strings and then swoop back on the strings. And then I'm going to play in a much more efficient way. This problem is actually very common to guitarists who play with the pick flat against a string, as we talked about a few moments ago in the video. So now compare what I just played with the pick moving in a straight line for each note. You can see that the motions are much smaller, and I'm still able to pick the notes with a lot of force to get the notes to be loud and articulate. So the solution here is very simple. You need to look at your picking hand when you practice and make sure that it is moving in a straight line as much as possible for every note you play. You're not going to be able to always play in a straight line for every note because sometimes when you skip strings, your pick has to move away from the strings a little bit. But when you're just playing scales where you're changing strings from one to the next without skipping any strings, you want to move in as straight of a line as possible with the pick. This will make your technique as efficient as it can be, and it will make everything about your playing feel much easier. The next very common bad habit in the picking hand is to anchor the fingers that are not holding the pick on the body of the guitar. Now, I know that there are some exceptions to what I'm about to say, and there are some great players, most notably guys like Michelangelo, who anchor their fingers on the body of the guitar or anchor their pinky on the body of the guitar and are able to play amazingly well. They're virtuoso guitar players, and they're some of my favorite players as well. But for the vast majority of guitar players who are nowhere near that level yet and want to get to that level, they're not going to get there by anchoring their fingers on the body of the guitar. And here are some reasons why. Most guitar players are not able to stay relaxed when they anchor the fingers that are not holding the pick on the body of the guitar, because they're using the body as a crutch and they're using so much force and power to press into the body of the guitar that they're unable to stay relaxed when they play. And as you already know, excessive tension makes fast playing impossible. So by removing this crutch and learning to play with the fingers not pressing into the body of the guitar, it'll be easier to manage excessive tension and learn to play fast in less time. The next reason why I do not recommend for you and for most guitar players to anchor the fingers that are not holding the pick on the body of the guitar is because you can and should use them to mute string noise and keep your playing cleaner. For example, if you're playing notes on the third string, you can and should be using the ring finger and or the pinky finger to rest on the second and first strings to keep them from vibrating. This way, you're actually using these fingers to help you play cleaner and play better, versus just having them be anchored on the body of the guitar and most likely constrict your arm with tension and not actually assist your playing in any way. The next reason why I do not recommend anchoring the fingers on the body of the guitar is because anchoring them makes it harder to cleanly transition from picking or sweep picking to tapping if you do two-hand tapping. And it is much easier to change between the two techniques cleanly when the fingers are not being used to being anchored in a certain spot. Now, of course, as I said, there are exceptions to everything I described for this particular rule, but these exceptions are exceptions for a reason. Most guitar players will not be able to play fast, cleanly and accurately by anchoring their fingers on the body of the guitar. So if you're not yet playing at the level you want to play and want to improve your guitar technique, then definitely give yourself some time to adjust. If you're used to anchoring the fingers on the body of the guitar, don't do this for a period of 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, and let yourself to adjust into the new habit, and you will see that your playing will start to feel cleaner, easier, more effortless, and your speed will begin to improve faster as well.